So, if you've ever either broken up or divorced, and there's probably at least more than two of you in the room that has, it makes you a little crazy. So when I filed for divorce with my ex-husband, we were amicable, we had no children, we even tried to find an attorney that would represent both of us because we were cool about that kind of thing. And so we were cool, and my friend said, listen, there's this really good book called The Old Girl's Book of Spells. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm 39 and I don't qualify as an old girl yet. And second of all, I don't need like magic. This is not Bewitched where you know, it's all good. And then after 280 days of silence from the courts, really, I went and I got the book. And there was a whole chapter on divorce, which I thought was great. So I went for the first spell. And there were 3 elements. You had to take a cleansing bath. You had to chant and spin in a circle. Listen, I haven't even got to the funny part yet. And then there were some bay leaves. And I always sort of think like, you know, like Law and Order, they always go after a crime. They're like, did she act unusual the past day? And so the bath involved dried marigold blossoms and juniper berries, and I couldn't find them anywhere. And then I was like, if I buy them and then the spell works, or I kill someone, they'll be like, yeah, she bought the juniper bath scrub last week. She did it. So I skipped the cleansing bath, and then the next part said, if you want to kick your spell up a notch, you should do it naked, because it really connects you with the universe, and you want the universe to feel your, intentions. And so, and you have to do it on a full moon unless it's on a Wednesday. And so I had to wait like 10 more days. My attorney's like, can you come in on Wednesday to sign documents? So I'm like, no, I really can't. And so then I waited until my husband was gone and he was out of the country, and I had this big barn. And so I was like, I'm going to go into the barn, and I set everything down, and I take my clothes off, but it's kind of weird to be naked, And then I'm spinning, and I'm like holding the book, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, spin clockwise, and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird because you're in a barn and spin to the north. And I'm like, I don't know. And so then I did. I took the robe off and I started spinning, and I'm like, free me from this horrible, terrible marriage, and then I'm like, oh, I'm feeling tingly, I'm feeling alive. And then I looked down, and there's this moth on my thigh, and he's not a little guy. He's big. And then he gets stuck in my pubic hair. Now, I spent all week trying to tell this story without telling you all that I got something stuck in my pubic hair, but it is the moth. So I finally have a story about a moth at the moth. So then I want to kill it, but then I had this uncle that said when he died, he was going to come back and guide me, and then I was like, what if my uncle is the moth? And then he's standing on his hind legs and he's waving at me, and I think, it's my Uncle Frank. I can't kill him. And then I think, do moths have teeth? Because if they do, I have a much bigger problem. And so then I get really freaked out, and I can't really finish the whatever, like close your circle. I'm like, and I go out of here. And I'm like, okay, I got to do the other part. So the other part is really easy. No juniper berries, no insects down there. Just you get bay leaves, and you write the name of your mediator on the bay leaf, and you put them in your shoe for a day or two so they can walk in your shoes. And I thought, well, this will be great, because I was still living with my horrible ex-husband at the time. I thought, this is fantastic. And so I call my attorney, and she says, I can't tell you that. And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, well, it's sealed court information. I said, are you kidding? I have spent 286 days and like 14 full moons waiting for something, and I'm just asking you for one thing, which is the name of the guys who are going to decide my fate. And she goes, you're onto something. And I go, no. She goes, you're doing something. And I said, I am really religious, and I pray all the time, and God listens better when you give him the names and mailing addresses, if possible, the people that I'm praying for. And she goes, you're onto something. And I said, I am religious. The church and the state thing you're messing with, and you're persecuting me as a person of faith. And so she called me back. She gave me the names of the people. They were retired judges. And I said, is this good news? And she goes, it's not the best people that we could get for you, but it'll do. So I write their names down. I put the bay leaves on. And what I sort of wasn't really planning on was that it's after September 11th, and what do you do when you go to a courthouse? You have to take your shoes off. So now I'm like, oh my God, I survived getting bitten by a moth who was actually my Uncle Frank, but now I'm gonna be jailed because I've got the names of judges on my feet. And so I take my shoes off, and then I do this weird shuffle over to the bench because I don't want the bay leaves to fall off because that would be worse than in the shoes. And then she comes up to me and she says, what did you do? I said, nothing, I did nothing. I prayed, what? She goes, both people called in sick this morning at the exact same time. What did you do to them? Nothing. I'm like rocking my arches in to try to get the bay leaves off the floor. Nothing. She goes, well, the really good news is they're the two favorite people in the whole wide world who are really in support of helping women after really yucky husbands. And so I got what I wanted that day.